The club hurling previews are back. We're brought to you now by Slattery Sullivan Insurances. Head there if you want to get a new business quote, whether it's motor, home, farm, commercial, whatever it is. Use the reference code OurGame and you'll get 10% off all new business quotes. Michael Verney, club hurling is back and there are an absolute litany of fixtures this weekend. There were some games last weekend. It's brilliant to be back.
It's unreal to be back. Even going down through the list of fixtures, it's just an endless list of fixtures. It's great because we didn't think we were going to have any fixtures at all. So it's class. It's you missed it so much when there was nothing going on, and just delighted that it's back where it should be with club action first and everybody basically getting a good go at it during the summer months. Hopefully, maybe you never know, maybe things will be like this in future years where the club gets the prime time of the season. I doubt it, but it's great to have it, even if it's just for this year.
And I'm sure many people who were playing, they would have been out training last night or tonight, and just the sun splitting the rocks, pucking the ball around. It's absolutely flying off the stick as well. Dry hurley, dry ball. It is so pleasurable to be back out there, isn't it? Like, you've played a few challenge matches yourself.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, there's nothing like that buzz of when you finish a training session or you're walking off and you've kind of totally emptied yourself, or you played a practice game and you've given it everything. Don't get me wrong, it's different because I think the lack of a dressing room does definitely make it different, because maybe it's a bit more difficult to foster kind of the same camaraderie or crack that you usually have. But as I said, it didn't look like we were going to have anything, so we'll take this, even if it's like, as Michael Quinlivan said during the week, even if it's like an under 10 blitz where you're leaving your gear bag at the side of the pitch, like that was probably the last time any of us ever did that. That's kind of what's going on now, but yeah, it's much better than nothing anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, a whole host of fixtures on this weekend, and there was hurling matches in Dublin, Wexford, different places around the country at the weekend. We'll start off with the first round of Tipperary that we're going to see this weekend, and I just kind of
it's not like you to start off in Tipperary.
Well, we definitely have a good following in Tipperary, so might as well give them exactly what they want. And just to kind of run through quickly some of the fixtures, and then we'll come back and touch on a couple. So Lynch versus Rossgrey, same group. We're going to have Killadangan, who I think would be fancied to go pretty far against JK Brackens, so Templemore there. Thurles Sarsfields against Kilruane MacDonagh, McCarthy Borris against Lockmore Castleiney. So that's a bit of a group of death there, with McCarthy Borris won't be expected to come through, but three pretty much heavyweights otherwise. Toomevara against Borris-Ileigh, Burgess against Upperchurch Drumban, and then Aerogue Anacarty Donahill against Clonoulty Rossmore, and Nina Aerogue against Holy Cross Ballycahill. But I think it's definitely worth stalling on the SARS against Kilruane MacDonagh there, because Thurles, I mean, if you've got a backline with Rona Maher, Pádraig Maher and Mickey Cahill, who may well actually all be in the half backline, you've got a serious proposition there. But they'll be up against it against Kilruane, who you've actually played against yourself recently.
Yeah, we played them last Friday. Jeez, a fairly formidable outfit now, in fairness. And it was they're a funny kind of a team. I didn't notice anyone really up even to the age of 30, maybe, apart from Seamus Hennessy. They're all energy. Drone Cahill, Craig Morgan, Niall O'Mara, Keane Darcy, a really formidable forward line. They play a kind of a possession kind of a style game and try to create overlaps, particularly in defence. And once they get a run in you, it's very hard to keep it into them pace wise and that, so you really have to get stuck into them. Chances we probably maybe should have played a sweeper against them. We didn't. Maybe SARS will do that. Maybe Pádraig Maher will sit back in the hole. But SARS are stung. SARS are stung after kind of going out early last couple of years and just not kind of performing up to their ability. Would I be right in saying that SARS actually caught Kilruane had the beaten the SARS in Nina one even, maybe in the quarter final?
That was
forward
a couple of years ago. Yeah, Rona Maher caught a ball, buried it in the net. The game was won, and I kind of have this thing that for a number of years that Kilruane are a common team, but I think at some stage you actually need to make that breakthrough, or there's always the concern that team will start getting inferiority complex, that they can't get it done at the business end of the season. And I watched Kilruane last year, and they beat Clonoulty Rossmore, who were reigning champions, beat them well, and then went on to the semi-final and couldn't get it done against Borris-Ileigh, who obviously went all the way onto the All-Ireland final. And I think the one thing for Kilruane is they have all the speed that you've talked about, and these games are going to be played on firm sod in the height of summer. So I think this really, really could be their chance. I'm not sure if Buggy is playing this year as well, but he'd be like that target man full forward who's unbelievably hard to play against. But I don't know, does that necessarily go with their free flowing style? Otherwise, their interchange and their movement, their speed. It's hard to know, but I do think they need to strike while the iron's hot, and that is now.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to have an alternative of a player like that. Now he wasn't playing the other night against us, and they were going with a more kind of a pacey kind of approach. But as you said, this is the year for that. They're not going to get bogged down. In when was your county final? Tipp county final was played the first week in November last year. It's not going to be like that this year. It's going to be played on top of the ground. Noel Larkin, actually, who was with Galway when they won the All-Ireland in 2017 under Micheál Donoghue, seems to be involved. He's definitely involved as a coach, I think. It looked like the other night. Like if you're saying how they need to kind of put a marker down, beating Thurles in the first round, a Thurles team that's stung, would be a fair marker to put down. But this is nearly the game of the whole weekend. This is I'd love to be getting out to Holy Cross, and the 200, including players or whoever that are going to be there, they're going to be lucky, I'd say, to be at this one, because this looks like an absolute belter of a game. Yeah,
and then you have the Lockmore Castleiney lads who'll be expected to beat McCarthy Borris, also lining out in Gaelic football. So it's going to be a frenetic period for them. Interesting to see how
the three McGraths actually played football last weekend. So if you're thinking anyone's going to be minding themselves or anything like that, Brian, Noel, and John all played football last weekend. So they're going to be busy men over the next couple of months.
Yeah, the best you can kind of hope for as the players and the management of both teams is that sometimes you have a game put to bed early, so you can take the McGraths off good and early and give them a rest and think, okay, we'll mind them for the next game, and all you have to do is just do a bit of touch work in the weeks in between. You obviously don't want to flog them. What's the point?
Exactly. It's basically, you play a match at the weekend, you come back to training on the Tuesday night. For lads that are playing particularly week on week, you're really only recovering on the Tuesday night, and you're really fine tuning on the Friday, and then you're good to go again the next week. So that's what they're going to be doing over the next while. It's really going to be everything, and everything should be focused around the game, making sure they're fit for the game and they're ready to go. But it's going to be an interesting time for those boys. But this is the sort of game where probably they should have too much for Mike Borris, I'd imagine. And this is probably a game that's important for score difference, maybe, because I'd say without putting Mike Borris down, I'd say the other three teams are going to be beating them, and then it could come down to head-to-heads and score difference to see who actually comes out of the group, because Thurles, Kilruane and Lockmore could easily beat each other in the games they played. They could all end up with one win or with two wins and one loss. So it's going to be that's really is the group of death in Tipp, in fairness.
Toomevara against Borris-Ileigh is an interesting game. I obviously would find it interesting as my home parish, and I want to see, can Borris-Ileigh take what they did in 2019-20, winning Munster, obviously winning the first county title since God was a boy. And also going on to an All-Ireland final and playing pretty well, and see if they can kick on. Like, can Brendan Maher have another massive season? Dan McCormack, can JD Devaney, of course, light up the season again? Conor Kenny, can he kick on to the next level? Then you have Toomevara, like a team that would have kind of held Borris-Leigh's head under water for many, many years when they were winning all those county titles and going on to win a couple of Munsters too. Like Mark McCarthy, Joey Mallochny, Andrew and Jason Ryan would be a lot of the kind of prominent players. Will Benny Dunn come out of, apparently he hadn't been playing, but will he come back? Will David Young, who'd been away in Dubai and was part of that Tipperary team that won the All-Ireland in 2010, coming on and scoring a point in the final, will those lads appear? And will there be, Toomevara aren't the team that they were in terms of winning all these titles, but when there's a local rival only out the road, and there's obviously that sort of undercurrent of feeling like these games can go any which way. So I'd say Toom certainly won't go down easy here.
Well, they had to stew on Borris' success all over the winter, and even if some lads maybe weren't back training in January, I'd say the itch was there in March and April to get back doing a bit, and lads would have had a time to get a good bit of training under their belt and get back at it. So there is a big rivalry there. Don't forget, last year people were absolutely hopping when you said there hadn't been a Tipperary senior hurling champion from the north in God knows how long, and Toom had won a heap of them.
I'm surprised my house didn't get egged like that referee's.
Yeah. But it's an interesting tie as well, because there's expectation on Borris now, maybe that there hadn't been before. Johnny Kelly is obviously staying involved with them. We played them a couple of weeks ago. They were moving very well. I think they're 13 of the All-Ireland final team. I think it was just your brother Paddy and JD Devaney that weren't playing. They looked very slick. They looked even better on the ball, I think, than they had last year. And yeah, they were just, even like someone like Dan McCormack, he was absolutely flying now, and even Brendan Maher was flying as well, and they looked like an even more well-oiled machine than they were last year. But they bring pressure this year that they didn't have before. They were always trying to make the breakthrough before. They had made the breakthrough. Now they're there to be shot at. Now they're the county champions that everybody's going to be up for when they play against them. So particularly Toom are definitely going to be up for it against them with local rivalries and things like that. So yeah, it's a tricky opener for Borris. I don't think to be too much in it. I'd expect them to come through it, but I don't think to be too much in it.
Absolutely. Now we'll move on to the Limerick Championship in a second, but in a general sense, do you think that club teams should actually be able to be little bit slicker than they were in previous years? Because, you know, obviously they haven't been training for months, but since they have come back, generally across the board, they've had more access to their full panel than in previous years. You know, like you've just mentioned, a couple of teams with county players. Would Thurles have had as much time to work with Paddy and Ronan Maher? Would Borris-Ileigh have had as much time to work with Dan McCormack and Brendan Maher? You know, this type of thing. So in some ways, should they be a bit more cohesive? Even in Bury yourself, like you've probably seen it with a couple access to more players.
Yeah, you've total access to players now, which would have been unheard of in other years, really. You know, particularly for the first couple of rounds of the championship, the county is invariably, and same with Tipperary or Kilkenny or wherever, the county is just finished and you're just seeing a lad maybe for the first time in a long time. Whereas now most teams have had at least a month. Everyone was back officially on the 24th of June. So everyone's back a month now at this stage. You've probably had the guts of maybe 12 to 15 sessions maybe, and including practice games, to go through tactically what you need to do. It's not just a case of, you know, your county player coming back and putting them in centre back and maybe not being able to fit into the system that you were playing before. You have a system. I think if managers were cute, they would realise that things would have had to change. That they would have had to look at maybe trying to, you know, they're actually going to have those players to implement their system now. So maybe little tweaks would have been made. I do think though, and you experienced it last weekend as well, I think the water breaks is an interesting one, because I think it's definitely a different dynamic to a game. While everybody needs to get hydrated and get water and stuff on board, it can totally change. It can totally change a game. I know anecdotally there was a local game between a senior team in Offaly and a senior team in Lynch, and the Lynch team were winning 2-8 to 3 points after 15 minutes, and the Offaly team ended up being up at half time after the water break. So you saw it last weekend as well. How much do you think water breaks can affect games? And just even, what was your own game like last weekend? I haven't really been chatting to too many people that actually played championship games since lockdown.
Yeah, I played the Senior B game in the Dublin Championship at the weekend, and I thought the water breaks completely go against the flow of what a team sport should be. You know, we're not like basketball where you've got quarters. We're not like NFL. And you know this whole term that GAA games take on a life of their own? Well, this kind of cuts that down. You could be mid-flow through a half. You know, you're on top, like you've just mentioned with that game you spoke about. And then all of a sudden, the whistle goes, and you're actually just scratching your head saying, what's he blowing for here? And then you hear someone say water break, and you're like, oh, do we need this? You know, we want the game to flow. That's the whole thing about sports, and GAA especially, that it takes on that life of its own, and you don't have a manager coming in saying, right, get 8 lads behind the ball here, we'll shut up shop for a minute. The players have to figure it out on the field. It's just an organic sort of a flow, because how often do you watch a game that in the first half a team has completely taken over and gone 10 points ahead, and half time, or it could have been a really high scoring game, then at half time both managers have a chance to sit down with their players and you have a dour second half. You want that flow to keep going. Another thing that I will say about the water breaks, and I don't think this will be seen for a while just yet, is that it's fine saying you can stop midway through first half, midway through the second half to get a water break. And especially in the first half, you can more or less get through the half without needing water. I mean, you will need it at times. But then second half, let's say it's blowing right on the midway point, which is 45 minutes, and you include injury time at the end of it, you might have a period where at your most dehydrated, or when your body temperature is at its highest and you need a drink, that you could go 20 minutes without getting water, and you actually have no access to get water. So I think these water breaks, they're okay. but I don't think it's a long-term solution, and we need to find something else, whatever that is. I'm not 100% sure just yet.
Just a quick one on that as well. I was chatting John Milan during the week. I was just asking because I saw he made his Junior B comeback. He came out of retirement, and he said he didn't start or anything like that, but he came on after about 43 or 44 minutes, and he said he was barely in on the pitch when the whistle was blown for the water break, and he basically said like he was in and he was just trying to get warm, and then he was back off again. So there's definitely going to be lots of like tactical substitutions now. There's no point in bringing a lad on 43 or 44 minutes now. You're better off waiting until after the break. Plus something that you said there as well, I do think, you know, if a team is struggling after 10 or 12 minutes and it looks like the game could get away from them, they could easily bring back, you know, a sweeper or two to keep themselves in the game until things start back up again. But just on your championship game last weekend as well, like obviously, you know, the social distancing and different things that we've experienced over through lockdown, like had you any experiences of that during the match, or was it you know, normality resumed and lads getting in each other's faces?
Complete normality. There was no such thing as social distancing. There's no such thing as backing off. There's no such thing as people not getting stuck in. Like there was even, like, let's call a spade. There was a couple of melees in our game, and at no point during the game was I thinking about like COVID-19. You just don't. I mean, there was even supporters coming in over the sideline. There was people. I mean, let's be honest here. Once people are at a game like this, same as if they're in a pub or down in Dame Lane or whatever, it kind of goes out the window. And that's not me saying that it should. It's just saying let's live in the real world here for a second. And you know, there was definitely a couple of incidents where you look back and say, right, like people really don't care once they step out onto the 4 white lines.
Yeah, no, I did. Well, I've seen the same, to be honest with you, in any match I've played as well. You've no, like it's your gag reflex, isn't it? Once something happens in the game, it's to get stuck in and do whatever you have to do. You're not thinking about anything else.
Gag reflex.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean. It's your reflex. You don't think of like your consequences. Someone might say after, oh, you weren't thinking of social distancing there. You don't think of it. You don't think of that. That's the last thing that comes into your mind. A little birdie was telling me, one of your cooler buddies is telling me that you were writing the takeover as well.
Yeah. Okay, right. I'll give a watered down version of it. But basically what happened is there was a high ball. I got the ball, and I was trying to burst out, and you know the way you'd be trying to get past someone, and my arm hit a lad on the helmet, but he held on to me then, and I was trying to get rid of the ball. The two of us kind of fell on the ground and our hurleys fell down. So I went to pick up my hurley, and it was a green grip, and I was like, oh, this isn't mine, because there was a bit of silver tape on it. And I said to the lad who I looked around and I saw another lad with a green gripped hurley, and I said, hey, I think you have my hurley. And he looked at it, and he had a real angry look in his head, which I later found out was because my arm had hit him on the head trying to burst out. He smashed my hurley over his knee. So I said, F you, and I smashed mine over his over my knee. And as it was going down, I was just like, please break. Because you can imagine it would be the most embarrassing thing in the world if you tried to smash someone's hurley. Of course, there was a bit of an old melee then, but sure, look, we got on with it. We got on with it. We'll move on.
Fair play, I have to say to you, because like I'd probably be in tears crying if someone broke my first hurl. So
I was devastated.
You have to get, that's the only way to get back at someone. You have to go like for like. The only way to get back at them is, you know, basically break what's you know, cherished to them. So you're dead right.
Yeah.
Lucky you didn't injure yourself or something like that though, do it in the process.
If his hurley didn't break over my knee, number one, absolute massive embarrassment because everyone would have seen it, and number two, it actually really hurt. It only doesn't hurt when it breaks. A bit like, you know, if you watch The Karate Kid, you understand that. We'll move on to the Limerick Championship. Patrickswell against the Dare is a pretty tasty fixture, isn't it?
It's tasty enough, yeah. Like Patrickswell are obviously reigning champions. Kieran Carey had left briefly, and he's after coming back, and he's involved with them again. You have obviously the Limerick captain Declan Hannon coming up against the likes of Keane Lynch, Dermot Burns, Aaron Gillan, even Jason Gillan, probably being goals for Patrickswell as well. Adair have been, you know, quarter finalists kind of maybe the last couple of years, but they haven't been in, you know, the real thick of it where Napier-Street, Patrickswell and Kilmallock have been. So I would expect Patrickswell to be coming out on top in that one. But then, like, if you look at then on the game on Saturday, then is really a clash of the two big hitters with Napier-Street and Kilmallock coming up against each other, like two powerhouses realistically within Limerick hurling, and of course na Piersig probably on a bit of a retrieval mission after last year, where they were knocked out. They were beaten in the semi-final last year, weren't they? By Kilmallock, I think, actually. A couple of big questions there is obviously Shane Dowland's county career is over. Like, will he be fit to play club with his knee injury, or what's the story there exactly? And I'd say in the Piersig, who have a fairly stacked club team now by all accounts, and probably better than anyone, they'll be absolutely mad to get back as Limerick champions again. They obviously wouldn't get a shot at Munster or the All Ireland this year if they won it, but they'd be mad to get back into the final at least anyway.
Yeah, there's so much quality across that team, and Will Donoghue, as we've talked about before, and was captain last year, stepping up more and more. Mike Casey fullback. I mean, what a spine there. Whether Donoghue plays midfield or centre back, you've got a serious spine there. Then forwards, the likes of David Dempsey, what a ball carrier, great hand on him as well, and he was definitely making more of an impact for Limerick during the league before things were suspended. Peter Casey, I mean, you can keep going. They really have something.
Adrian Breen, Kevin Downs, like they've serious options. They have serious options.
Absolutely. Also in the Limerick Championship, Monaleen against South Liberties and Blackrock against Ballybourne. So let's move on to the Waterford Championship. And before we talk about the games in particular, Austin Gleeson, did you see that before and after, like the absolute body transformation he's done over the last few months? Now, he did reference kind of maybe not being in the right place and binging and that type of thing. And I think, he has now kind of brought it to light, and I think people have hinted at it. He's never really looked like he's athletically as filled out and as explosive looking as he could be in the last couple of years. So now I wonder, Austin Gleeson in this shape and the confidence he'll get from that, if he can also hit the ground running and get his hurling up to the level we know it can get to, he could be absolutely fearsome.
Yeah, he would have talked about before. He was actually Austin was a goalkeeper coming up in some of the Waterford underage teams, and he would have said that he was a bit kind of heavier and a bit smaller maybe than some of the other lads in his age group. He's obviously a big fella now. He's probably about 6'2", I'd say. But I did think it was interesting. The shape he was in for a county player. The before picture I did think was particularly interesting, because I think the picture on the right, the after picture, is what a lot of county players. That's the shape that a lot of county players are in anyway. In my own opinion. I don't know. Is it heaping more pressure on yourself as well? To me, I think that would have been more the sort of thing maybe that you would have done at the end of the season. And when people were saying, geez, Austin Gleeson was flying, what was the recipe for his success? And he basically, he's going back to the S&C coach that he has used, and, paying compliments to him and basically saying, this is one of the main reasons why he was a different player this year. But to me, I don't know if he's putting more pressure on himself now that he doesn't necessarily need to have before the championship has even started. I'm not sure. What do you think of that yourself?
I think there's probably, on Austin's behalf, he's probably been sound to the coach, who you can be sure that a relationship has been built up when a player is working with a coach. Now, I did sort of a very heavy training period about 5 years ago, first time I'd ever really done it, and the coach that I did it with, Clean O'Connor, who's involved with the Dublin Hurlers at the moment, you'd almost want to say how good they are. And I would say he's probably built up a thing with that coach, and you can see the article on Our Game today, and he probably feels like, do you know what, I'll pay him a bit of a compliment here, I'll get it out there about it. So I'd say it's probably a soundness on his behalf more so than anything else.
Yeah, possibly so. I do have to say, as I referenced there, the before picture, I don't think there would be too many county players in that sort of condition. Pre-lockdown, post-lockdown, during lockdown. That's just my own opinion. I thought that was nearly a throwback to 10 or 15 years ago. Even I
don't think he was quite like at that looking like that when the season had started earlier in the year. But I would say what I got from his message is that as the lockdown started, he probably started binging more. So I don't think he definitely wasn't at the level he now is at earlier in the year when they were playing. But I think somewhere during the lockdown it got worse. But he's never been at in this sort of shape. And I just reckon if he gets a bit of form going, starting against Clonee this weekend, you could be up. You could have a serious player, because he didn't look like a serious player even during the league earlier this year. Centre back sent off against Tipperary, not moving well. Obviously the flashes were there, but now we might see it over 70 minutes.
But see, like, if you're not, like, when do you get frustrated? Usually, like, really good players get frustrated when they're not able to do things that they feel they should be able to do, or, get to a position where they were before. Just say, for example, his kind of high point would have been 2016 when he got to crazy levels. The day against Kilkenny in the drawing game in Croke Park, and even the replay game down in Thurles. Like, he was nearly untouchable when he was in around the ball. He was able to do things, probably that he hasn't been able to do in the last couple of years. So his physical conditioning, the change in that, will probably give him a chance to get back up to those levels. If he does, he could be coming into the inter-county championships in absolutely an unbelievable vein of form and in serious confidence. And if he does, he'd be some weapon for Liam Cahill to have, because he'd feel almost invincible. But it's going to be interesting to see. Talk to people on the ground at the Waterford club games, and even starting this weekend against Clonee, just see how he's moving and how he goes, because it's definitely going to be interesting. It's a fair transformation if he can mix that with what we know he can do on the pitch and with the ball. It could be a very interesting combination.
I'd back him to do it. I look, who doesn't like seeing Austin Gleeson when he's on the top of the ground? Dungarvan against 4 Mile Water is another game that's in Group C. The Mount Sion game was in Group B. Group A, Ballygunner against Tallow, and Ballygunner are going for 7 in a row at this stage, beating Munster finalists last year. Do you think that in Waterford teams are bet before they go out in a lot of cases?
Yeah, possibly so. As you say, going for 7 in a row, won the Munster the year before last, beaten in the Munster final obviously last year by Borris-Ileigh. When you measure up their players against what other teams have, it can be very easy to get into the psyche where, like, we just can't match up against these guys. They're going to have their one of their worst days, and we're going to have one of our best days. Like, it's funny for Ballygunner. Like, they wouldn't be aiming, no more than say Cara Finn in the football, they wouldn't be aiming for a county championship. They'd be aiming for a Munster, or they'd be aiming for an All Ireland. Whereas now it's just a county championship. That's all they can win. So it'll be interesting to see if that affects their approach at all. As I said, they're going for 7 in a row. They've, like, maybe it won't mean as much maybe this year, because there's not that added incentive of what comes after it. But I think Tallow are going to be seriously up against it when you put down what Ballygunner have, and even like Philip Mahoney stepping away from Waterford. He's been with Ballygunner for the early part of the year, and will now have been with them for the last month as well. Like, when you measure up what they have against others, it's going to be very, very difficult. I think the one team, and I was at the county final last year, the one team that could put it up to them if they really, really deliver their best, is probably De La Salle, and they're opening a really interesting game this weekend. They're playing Ballysaggart. It's their first game senior. Ballysaggart is basically a village, and it's basically like the Bennett family and co. It's an unbelievable achievement for them to be up senior with the pick that they have. It's a tiny pick. That's kind of like that. There's a classic version of little against large. The city team, one of the city teams against the village team.
Yeah, absolutely. And Frank Flannery is involved with them.
Yeah, Frank Flannery, of course. Anyone down in Cork knows Frank fairly well. You know him probably fairly well too, because he brought Cool Hearts. I think it was the 2015 Leinster final. I think.
Yeah,
he's brought. Yeah. He seems to have brought success everywhere he's gone. And as I said, he was the one to get Oulart over the line. He was the one to get Ballysaggart over the line in intermediate last year. But they're going to be really up against De La Salle.
Absolutely. And just another point on Ballygunner. I think Liam Cahill will be very interested to see how Desi Hutchinson gets on this year, because he showed great flashes with Ballygunner last year. And he was kind of up and down a bit watching him with Waterford during the league. And maybe that confidence can come back, or he can get up near the top level, a bit more hurling. Like, obviously the more hurling he does, the more he transitions back from soccer, and I think he'd be watching a very interested spectator for that game.
Will he be an interested spectator though? Like, where does the county manager or the county selectors come into this 200? I wonder. Genuinely now, like. You don't learn as much from looking at a video of a game of a player. You don't see the intricacies going on off the ball, their movement, what they're doing, the way they're communicating with their teammates or whatever. I saw Matty Kenny at one of the Dublin games last year, or last week, and I was wondering, geez, will all the county managers get into these games?
Definitely.
Like, should a county manager be given preference to go into a club game over, a die-hard club member from either of those clubs? And I think it's a fairly valid question.
It's a valid question, but you know well that county managers at times run everything So you're suggesting that they wouldn't get into one of the club fixtures? Come on, live in the real world.
I'm telling you what I'm saying. I'm saying that the diehard club member of whichever club it is, be it Ballygunner or whatever, deserves to be in there more than the county manager.
But sure, I'm not saying they don't deserve. I'm just saying live in the real world here. Let's go on to the Galway Championship. Loads of games here as well, and I'll just kind of fly through them and you can stop me as you feel like it. Loughrea against Tommy Larkin, so I think some of the players that stand out there would be Johnny Cohn and Jason Flynn, and maybe Éanna Murphy, the goalkeeper. Group 2, Turlockmore against Liam Mellows. So you had a couple of thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think that's one of the games of the weekend, to be honest with you. Turlock are a bit, not that they're a sleeping giant, but they've had unbelievable underage success in the last couple of years. Obviously, Dahi Burke is the one player you probably think of. You think of Turlockmore. They've serious strength in depth as well. And just listen to the Tribe Talk, the Galway hurling podcast with Patrick Early and David Connors. They had Damien Hayes on, and I suppose Damien's just retired from club action with Portumna and can kind of say what he thinks, and he tipped Turlock to win the county title. They're that sort of a team. If you're looking at someone outside of Thomas's, probably Mellows or maybe Capatagal, they're probably the team that you're going to be looking at. They probably tick an awful lot of boxes. This is a huge game though. Mellows obviously won their first county title in a long time. Was it at the end of 2017?
Yeah. And
they were beaten in the last two finals. I think they were beaten by 2 points by Thomas's last year. So this is a fairly stern test to Turlockmore from the off, and I think Turlockmore have Franny Ford involved, who was coach obviously with Micheál Donoghue in 2017 when they won the All-Ireland as well, so they'll be fairly well briefed.
And I reckon, much like Killerwan, who we mentioned earlier in the show, there comes a point where Turlockmore are actually going to have to make that breakthrough. But Liam Mellows is definitely a tough team to go up against. Moving on to Group 3, Castlegar against St Thomas's. So St Thomas's, of course, won the county championship last year. Castlegar, you've Ger Farraher and those wrists in there. Definitely Thomas's will be fancied. Sarsfield's against Portumna. So a couple of former heavyweights there.
Big time, yeah. Obviously, two former Club All-Ireland winners. No more than Castlegar and Thomas's. I think Thomas is an interesting one. Again, they're another team who would have been Thomas's would have been hurting since January over basically feeling that they didn't show up against Borris-Ileigh, and the most they can do this year now is win a county title. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what it just could be a bit underwhelming. It could be hard maybe to get back up for. They obviously will have Fintan Burke back for the whole of the club campaign this year. Sarsfields and Portumna probably teetering on relegation last year as well, so they'll be keen to get off to a winning start there. Clarenbridge against Ormore Marie is another interesting one as well. We played Clarenbridge a couple of weeks ago. Everything kind of goes through Evan Nyland. He was in centre forward against us. He's their main man. And then the last one, Tina Abbey Donaire against Capatagal. Capatagal have been knocking on the door again the last couple of years, beating semi-finalists in the last 2 years. Ollie Baker was over them last year. I think he's involved again this year. So when you go down through the depth of that, there are an awful lot of really good teams. Not probably what it was in Galway maybe 15 or 20 years ago when Athenry, Sarsfields and Portumna and these were winning All Irelands, but there's still a fair depth. Like when you look at through a championship and you think there are many championships where 7 or 8 teams could probably win. Galway is probably one of the few where you think there are a good handful of teams with really realistic aspirations of winning.
Quick run through Carlow. So Nave Owen against Nave Mulling, which is St Mullins to most people's. So Nave Owen have been kind of in the doldrums for a few years, and county champions are St Mullins. Then Ballinkillen against Bagnalltown Gales. Moving on to Wexford then, Clockbawn against St Martin's. So St Martin's were on telly last week against Eldred Bala, winning 5-19 to 3-16. Jack O'Connor stood out a mile scoring 2-9, and he is more and more establishing himself as one of the top players in the country. And that's, when your brother is Rory O'Connor, is obviously a star player, that's no mean feat to be standing out like that. Jake Furman, he scored 3-2, so a bit of a star in the making there, possibly, certainly at club level. John Meyler, is he the man to take Martins on to that next level?
Are Jack O'Connor and Rory O'Connor brothers or cousins?
I thought they were brothers. And
you could be right. I thought
someone will correct us. If we're wrong, someone will correct us, so please do.
Yeah, I thought they were cousins. Maybe you're right. The only thing I'd say about the John Meyler thing is, what's the next level this year? Do you know what I mean? Next level is winning the county title.
Yeah, I know you can't go any further than that. But to bring them up to the next, they look like they physically look like a team ready to kick on to that next level as well. So winning a couple of county titles in a row and dominating your local area in the same way that Owlers would have done in the past, and then being in a position where you start that season not thinking about, we're going to win this county title. Now, of course, that's always the primary focus, but that you're almost thinking, we've a team that can go all the way here. And I think Martins have an awful lot of raw materials where they can be thinking that way, and that's why I asked John Meyler, the guy, to start making them think that way.
They definitely have the potential, all right, without a doubt. I don't think the Naivana people would be too happy with you saying that they've won a couple of county titles in a row, because Naivana won the county title in 2018.
That's what I'm saying, but that they have to get to that stage where they are winning them year after year after year.
Well, they definitely have the potential to. There's no doubt. When you say, like, when you have Jack O'Connor and when you have Rory O'Connor,
Joe O'Connor,
yeah, do you know what I mean? They're going to be very, very hard to beat. But yeah, like, in fairness, the fair play to John Meyler. He's after stepping back from inter-county and getting stuck in straight away with a decent club team. But like, when you go through some of the management teams and some of the teams in Wexford, it's a very, very competitive championship as well. So it's far from a given that Martins will be favourites to win it, but it's far from a given that they would win it. I suppose in that case, then, if you're saying about getting to the next level, it's very important that they do, when other teams are kind of popping their heads up maybe and saying that they could step up.
And Naivana, who you've mentioned against Rapparees, so obviously the Liam Ryan injury, that's like, you broke that story. That's a bit of a tasty one, that he's going to be out of action now, when all the talk was he had injured himself in Wexford county training. But like, when you were investigating this story, what did you actually find?
Yeah, so there was a piece on Wexford today where they're interviewing Padge Skinner-Doyle, one of the, like, I love that type of thing. Padge Skinner-Doyle, he's I'm not too sure if he's the manager. I think Adrian Fenlon is the de facto manager of the Raps, but he's involved with the backroom team anyway. And he basically told Wexford today that, you know, that Liam Ryan is going to be missing. He injured himself, and then he says he injured himself doing something with the county or whatever, which obviously set alarm bells ringing for me when I heard that. And then I kind of put that story together, put it to the Wexford County Board. They said that categorically the injury had happened with the club. And then I contacted the Raps chairman the next day, Michael Doyle, and he said that it had happened with the club. I'm going to take their word as their bond that it did happen with the club. But there was definitely some people who were fairly skeptical of whether it had happened with club or county. Obviously, if it had happened with the county, that's totally against all kind of rules and regulations in the last couple of months, and obviously restrictions that are placed on county teams training. So definitely caused a bit of excitement down the sunny southeast anyway.
So Naivana won their first county title in 2018, and the Raps lost to Shelmaliers 2-14 to 2-9 in the first game. So without Liam Ryan also, you'll be looking at Naivana to win this year. Glyn Barntowner against St Anne's. So St Anne's had a narrow, high-scoring win over Ratmuir. Diarmuid O'Keefe and Liam Og McGovern, obviously very high-profile players. St Mogues are feathered against Ferns St Aidan's. So Ferns kind of need this one. They had a good lead against Fate Harriers the last day. They were 11 points to 1-3 ahead at the interval, and like a late Lee Chin goal and point ended up with the Harriers winning 2-11 to 16 points. Narrow defeat there. That really puts them under the cosh.
It does, yeah, because that's a really tough. That's a tough group. Like, you would expect them to come through. You would expect them to come through against Fethard now, to be fair. But like, they have to. If they lose, they're basically out of the championship, and they will be. You know, when the Wexford fixtures came out, there's people saying that originally you could have been out of the championship in 4 days, but now it could be a week, and the likes of Paul Morris and a couple others could be out of the championship after a week. I don't see it happening, because I think they're going to be far too strong for Fethard, but they need to get the train back on tracks this weekend.
Absolutely. The Clare Championship, I was just looking in one of the papers that the proposed formats for Clare senior hurling and intermediate hurling. So there's 8 teams against each other in the opening round, and in the second round, the 8 winners from round 1 play the 8 losers, and the winner of the second round tie will advance to quarterfinals. So in some ways, you're kind of a little bit, you're not necessarily hugely advantaged by winning your first game. In some ways, obviously you should be playing against a team that you then beat, but you could have 2 heavyweights against each other, and you're prize for winning your first game is a match against a really, really strong team. So I know everyone's trying to find a way to make their championships work, but this will work very well for some teams and poorly for others.
Yeah, it's just amazing when you go through all the different counties, just how many different structures there are. Like the Offaly Football Championship had a structure last year where there was 2 groups of 4, but you didn't play the teams in your own group. You played the teams in the other group, and then all the points came together, and it got really messy where one team won 2 games and ended up out, and another team won no games and ended up getting through, or maybe won 1 game. Then I was chatting to Hugh McFadden last week from Donegal, and he was saying basically that with the way their championship is, they play 4 games. They know who they're playing in the first 2, but they don't know yet who they're playing in the other 2. He said they won't find out till the week before the championship game. But it's kind of a random kind of a draw. So it's just amazing all the different structures here. I think as regards structures, you just want it to be as fair as possible. So I don't think somebody winning the first game in Clare should be punished then if they get beaten in the second game. If you know what I mean, if they get beaten in the second game by a team which lost their first game.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Just to run through some of the fixtures, so Clonlara against Newmarket and Fergus. Another opportunity for you to call Clonlara underachievers, of course.
They are. They're massive underachievers. There's no point in saying any different, because when you go down through, the list of personnel that they have, they obviously, and I presume they won't have John Conlon this year, and like the Derek Onan, Tots O'Connell, Nicky O'Connell, and several more on top of that as well. Like when you put their players down on paper, you're just wondering how have they not won more than they have. I think they've won county title shown in the last decade, and that's just not enough for the talent that they have.
Yeah, I'll just run through some of the other fixtures. Aina Kilnamona are going to be against Clooney Quinn, so we'll see what the situation is with Peter Duggan. Not 100% sure if he's in Australia or not. We were trying to look it up there. It's hard to tell, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it looks like he's still out in Australia, but as I said, it is hard to tell, and you're basing maybe on an Instagram photo or something like that, and maybe they're pulling the wool over people's eyes, and he'll be back playing this weekend.
Yeah, people don't need to hear about what sort of a creep you are on Instagram, so we'll move on from that. I'm only joking. Broadford against O'Callaghan and Mills, 6 Mile Bridge against Aerogue Ennis, and obviously 6 Mile Bridge are the champions. Fecal against Whitegate, Cratloe against Kilmaley, and Clarecastle against Wolftones, and Ballier finally against Crusheen. So Tony Kelly, let's see how he gets on against the Catenaccio style of Crusheen, who do like to lure you into a bit of a battle and shut you down, from what I've seen over the years.
Interesting as well, like people have said different things about whether Wexford were training during the lockdown and things like that, but Davy's undivided attention, I'd say at the moment, will be with 6 Mile Bridge. He's obviously involved there again. I actually was chatting to Saoirse Bulfin during lockdown, and he was just saying that Davy asked him, or what was it? He said he heard secondhand that Davy was going to be involved with 6 Mile Bridge maybe last January. And he said it to Davy. Davy said to him, "You come in and take a session or whatever." And he was like, "To be honest with you, Davy, I'm up the walls with whatever." And he said, "Well, if you need me to come in, I will." And he said he ended up being involved in the guts of 45 sessions with them after. So like Davy's undivided attention is probably there at the moment. Saoirse Bulfin's probably there as well, and Tim Crowe as well. But they're coming up against Shane O'Donnell this weekend. So that's a tasty enough tie there in Clare.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, a quick run over the last couple of ones as well. So in Donegal, Setanta are champions. They're against Burt. Buncrana against St. Eunan's. Setanta, well, actually, isn't it? Between Setanta and Burt, they've 39 of the last 41 titles, so that's fair going. Mayo, you've got Castlebar Mitchells against Turin, and Turin are the Connacht Intermediate hurling champions after beating Kinvara last year. Westport against Ballyhaunis. In Westmeath, you're looking at Brownstown against Father Dalton's, and Loughlane Gales, Tommy Doyle, of course, fullback, he's with them, against Castletown Gagan. You're also looking at St. Bridget's against Cullion, and Raharney against Clonkill. Clonkill going for 3 in a row. Anything stand out there just before we finish?
No, Raharney and Clonkill is a fair open around match in Westmeath there as well. Yeah, it's just great. Isn't it great that there's such a kind of plethora of matches on over the weekend? You kind of you could get lost in it. I just encourage anyone, if we missed out on anything, or you see anything big kind of coming up over the next couple of weeks, just to give us a holler on Twitter, just to make sure that we don't miss it, because there's going to be some great matches coming up over the next probably good to 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. It's great. It's going to be full bore now.
Yeah, we absolutely love it. And don't forget, sponsored by Slattery Sullivan Insurances. If you need to get your quotes for motor, home, farm, commercial, call 067 56 705. And if you want to get 10% off, give them the reference code OurGame, and that's for all new business quotes. Thank you very much, Michael.
Cheers, Shane. Come on.